Most people don't panic about retirement when they're young. They panic on a random Tuesday night. Maybe it's after paying rent, or after checking a bank app and seeing a number that feels way too small for the amount of effort they've put into life. Maybe it's when they realize another year passed and nothing really changed financially. And the thought sneaks in quietly, not loudly, just a soft, uncomfortable question. Am I already too late? That question doesn't feel dramatic at first. It feels practical. It feels adult. But it doesn't stay small. It grows. It follows you into work. It sits next to you while you eat dinner. It shows up when you hear words like retirement, savings, future, or freedom. And eventually, it turns into a story you tell yourself, a story that says you missed your window, that everyone else figured it out earlier, that starting late means you already failed. If that sounds familiar, you're not broken, you're human. And more importantly, you've been taught the wrong problem. Because starting late is not the reason most people struggle with retirement. It's just the excuse their anxiety grabs onto. The real reasons are quieter, deeper, and far more fixable than you've been led to believe. The story we're told about retirement is very clean and very unrealistic. Start early, invest consistently, let time do the work. And if you didn't do that, well, good luck. That story sounds logical, but it skips over real life. It skips over layoffs, family obligations, medical bills, immigration, underpaid work, career detours, burnout, and the simple fact that most people are just trying to survive for a long time before they ever get a chance to plan. When someone says, "I started too late," what they usually mean is, "I didn't have spare money, spare energy, or spare mental space earlier." And that's not a personal failure. That's a reality millions of people live in. The misunderstanding happens when people confuse timing with outcome. They assume that because they didn't start early, the ending is already written. But that belief ignores how money behavior actually works. It ignores psychology, it ignores adaptability, and it ignores how most financial progress really happens later in life, not earlier. The truth is, most people don't meaningfully build stability in their 20s. They build habits, coping mechanisms, and sometimes debt. Their 30s are often spent juggling responsibility, kids, parents, rent, career pressure, exhaustion. It's not exactly a golden age of extra cash. For many, real financial clarity doesn't even arrive until their 40s or 50s, when they finally understand their patterns, their values, and their limits. Starting late doesn't mean starting weak. It often means starting informed. What actually derails retirement for most people isn't the age they begin, it's the stories they believe once they do. Stories that create paralysis, stories that turn every decision into proof that it's hopeless, stories that frame money as a scoreboard instead of a tool. There's a psychological trap here that doesn't get talked about enough. When someone believes they're behind, they tend to swing between two extremes. Either they avoid thinking about money entirely because it feels painful and shameful, or they chase aggressive, unrealistic fixes because slow progress feels insulting when time feels scarce. Neither of those responses comes from logic, they come from fear. And fear is a terrible financial planner. Avoidance feels safer in the moment. You don't look at the numbers, you don't open the statements, you tell yourself you'll deal with it later when things are better. But later quietly becomes years, and the anxiety grows in the background, untouched. On the other side, panic creates urgency without clarity. People feel pressure to catch up, so they take risks they don't fully understand, overextend themselves, or set expectations so high that burnout becomes inevitable. When those plans don't work perfectly, it reinforces the original belief, see, too late. But notice something important here. In both cases, the problem isn't math, it's emotional interpretation. The belief that time already ran out distorts decision-making long before numbers ever get involved. Here's something rarely said out loud. Retirement failure usually doesn't happen suddenly. It happens slowly, through years of small emotional decisions made under stress. Not saving because it feels pointless, overspending because the future feels abstract, staying stuck because learning feels overwhelming. None of that is about starting age, it's about mindset under pressure. Now let's talk about the part that actually gives people hope, but in a grounded, realistic way. Money doesn't grow in a straight line across a lifetime. It grows in phases. Early life is about learning and surviving. Midlife is often about capacity. Skills mature. Income potential changes. Stability improves. Late stages are about optimization and preservation. When people say starting early is everything, they ignore how uneven earning power really is. A person who saves a small amount for decades but never increases their earning capacity isn't automatically better off than someone who starts later but finally has clarity, control, and consistency. The difference isn't age, it's alignment. Alignment means your spending reflects your values, your goals match your reality, and your plan fits your nervous system, not just a spreadsheet. Here's a simple example. Imagine two people. One started saving at 25, but never felt in control. They saved inconsistently, dipped into accounts when stressed, and avoided learning because it felt boring or scary. The other didn't start until 45, but by then understood their habits, knew their fixed costs, and could commit calmly without panic. Who's actually in a better position emotionally? And over time, emotional steady behavior usually wins. Late starters often have one massive advantage they don't recognize. They know what didn't work. They know the cost of avoidance. They know what financial stress feels like in their body. That awareness, when used gently instead of harshly, creates better decisions. The turning point for many people doesn't come from a bigger paycheck or a perfect strategy. It comes from a quiet realization. The realization that retirement isn't a finish line, it's a transition into a different pace of life. And that transition is shaped more by flexibility and peace of mind than hitting a specific number. When someone says, "Can I catch up?" when starts asking, "How can I reduce future pressure?" everything changes. Decisions become calmer, goals become more realistic, progress becomes visible. Reducing pressure doesn't mean giving up, it means shifting focus. Instead of obsessing over what should have happened, attention moves to what can still improve. Instead of chasing an ideal lifestyle, people design a sustainable one. Instead of aiming for perfection, they aim for resilience. This mindset shift affects behavior immediately. People stop punishing themselves for past choices and start working with their current reality. They stop viewing money as a moral judgment and start seeing it as a tool for comfort, safety, and options. And here's where the psychology quietly does its work. When anxiety decreases, consistency increases. When consistency increases, results follow. Not magically, gradually, humanly. Practical progress doesn't look dramatic. It looks like clarity around monthly costs. It looks like understanding where money actually goes instead of guessing. It looks like making one adjustment and letting it settle before making another. It looks like choosing boring stability over exciting stress. For someone starting later, the goal isn't to replicate someone else's timeline. It's to build a system that works with who they are now. Energy levels matter. Family obligations matter. Health matters. Peace matters. There's also an uncomfortable truth worth saying gently. Many people don't need a luxury retirement to feel okay. They need predictability. They need fewer financial surprises. They need housing security, manageable expenses, and a sense that they won't be forced into impossible choices. That kind of retirement is built through simplification as much as accumulation. Simplification doesn't mean deprivation. It means deciding what actually matters before money decides for you. It means noticing how much stress comes from trying to maintain lifestyles that no longer serve you. It means recognizing that freedom often comes from needing less, not earning endlessly more. Late starters who succeed often do something counterintuitive. They stop racing. They slow down enough to make deliberate choices. They build confidence not by taking big leaps, but by keeping promises to themselves consistently. Confidence grows when actions feel sustainable. When someone proves to themselves that they can manage their finances calmly for 6 months, something shifts. The future stops feeling like an enemy. It starts feeling negotiable. Another thing that rarely gets mentioned is how much retirement anxiety is actually time anxiety. It's not just about money. It's about fear of aging, fear of decline, fear of becoming dependent, fear of being invisible. Money becomes the symbol, but the emotion runs deeper. Addressing that fear means acknowledging it without letting it drive every decision. It means recognizing that no plan eliminates uncertainty, but thoughtful preparation reduces vulnerability. It means understanding that adaptability is a form of wealth. People who start late often underestimate how much room there is to adjust. Work arrangements change, expenses change, priorities shift. Life is not static. Planning as if it is only increases stress. When someone allows themselves to believe that their future can still be shaped, motivation returns. Not frantic motivation, but steady engagement, the kind that survives bad months and unexpected costs. The most reassuring truth in all of this is also the simplest. Progress beats perfection, always. A slightly better situation next year is a win. Less anxiety around money is a win. Feeling informed instead of overwhelmed is a win. Retirement doesn't require catching up to an imaginary version of success. It requires moving forward from where you actually are. If you're watching this and thinking, "I wish I had started sooner," that thought doesn't need to disappear. It just needs to stop being in charge. You can acknowledge it without obeying it. Starting late doesn't disqualify you. Giving up does, and giving up usually comes from believing a story that was never fully true to begin with. You are not behind because you started late. You're only behind if you decide the past has more power than the present, and that's a decision you're allowed to revisit. The future isn't built in one moment. It's built in small, repeated choices that feel boring on the surface, but calming underneath, and calm is an underrated form of wealth. If nothing else, let this thought sit with you. You don't need to do everything. You just need to do something, and then keep doing it gently. Time didn't run out. It just changed shape. And progress, even late, still counts.